Welcome. Welcome to Acts of Magis. This is one way the Loyola Schools tries to celebrate grace. Grace, even in the face of adversity. I'd like to thank the Loyola Schools faculty members who are going to do their presentations. They are commendable in their own excellence, expertise, and passion for the common good. I'd also like to thank the University Research Council and the Ateneo Research Institute of Science and Engineering for collaborating in organizing this event. So welcome again. Go with hope and courage.
Dr. Alvin Ang, a professor of the Ateneo Economics Department and the director of the Ateneo Center for Economic Research and Development, or ASERD. He was the president of the Philippine Economic Society, the professional association of economists in the country, in 2013. Prior to joining the Ateneo Economics faculty in 2014, he was the Director of Research for Culture, Education, and Social Issues at the University of Santo Tomas. He finished his master's degree in public policy at the National University of Singapore as a scholar of the Singapore government, and his PhD in applied economics at Osaka University as a scholar of the Japanese government. Dr. Ang has more than 20 years of professional experience in both the public and private sector. His expertise and interests include development planning, policy formulation and analysis, public finance, local governance, competitiveness, and labor and migration. Dr. Ang has not only published in local research journals, but also presented them in the international conferences including in Malaysia, Thailand, the United States, and Italy. He has also served as a consultant in various local and international organizations such as the Department of Trade and Industry, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, and the International Labour Organization. Together with Jeremiah Openiano of the University of Santo Tomas, he was recipient of a Global Development Network Grand Prize Award for Most Outstanding Research on Development to analyze the effects of migration and remittances on rural communities in the Philippines. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought about uncertainty regarding the economic state of the country, with policy briefs such as possible economic impacts of falling oil prices, the pandemic, and the looming global recession onto overseas Filipinos and their remittances, and alternative delivery of subsidy funds during COVID-19. Dr. Ang has shed some light on the economic situation. He has also shared his valuable insight in his YouTube channel called Everyday Economics, where he explains the implications of the economic crisis in a simple yet profound manner. His presentation today will share the current status of global and local economic conditions, which is based on papers written by his colleagues at the Economics Department. He and his colleagues have shown that various economic and social indicators are pointing to a longer than expected downturn. His presentation will attempt to provide an understanding of how to better prepare for the negative economic impacts of the global crisis.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Acts of Magis, Ateneans in the Service of Society. I am Chris Castillo, your moderator, and I come from the Student and Administrative Services cluster of the Loyola Schools. So welcome again. This is the 7th episode of Acts of Magis, and we're happy to be with you every Friday, bringing you new information, relevant information, and hopefully information that can help you through this crisis we're all facing. So as we know, we have Dr. Alvin Ang with us this afternoon. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Chris, and to everyone who's watching.
Yes, kumusta naman po kayo?
Okay naman, okay.
Okay naman, sir. So to our audience, so we have actually perhaps a YouTube sensation in his own right. So as mentioned, Sir Alvin has his own YouTube where we can also find his past works and other and other talks he has given, but we'll talk about that more later on. So we're coming to you live on two platforms. We have a G Meet happening where we can take on questions of those who are in the G Meet, but we're also coming to you live on the Ateneo Facebook account. No? So for those who are watching us on the Ateneo Facebook account, you may still join the discussion by putting in your questions or comments in the comment section, and then later on during the Q&A portion, we'll be tackling them. Before we proceed, we'd like to say thank you to the University Research Council and the Ateneo Research Institute of Science and Engineering for bringing this session of Acts of Magis, Ateneans, and the Service of Society together. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Dr. Alvin Ang.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris, and for everyone who's watching this afternoon. I'd like to thank also the URC for this opportunity to share our research that we are doing in relation to this crisis. Um, Let me share with you these points that we have gone through in the last few weeks. And as already mentioned by Chris, we in the economics department have written a number and a series of policy briefs in response to this crisis. I'm going to share with you a couple of slides that talks about the current situation, global and then national, and then looking forward, what do we do? Right. So the question I think right now, most people are going as we are going through this crisis is that what are we up against? I think it's a very interesting question because in the global arena, in the different analysis that have been given about this crisis, this is like what we are experiencing right now. The IMF calls this crisis the Great Lockdown, the worst global downturn since World War II. This forecast that they have made actually was still very much looking at a positive, a little positive growth, but they just said last week that they will revise it significantly in the next 2 weeks. So that's already how the IMF had seen it. The World Bank also released their report last week, also showing a significant decline of economic activity. Indeed, worse than the past crisis that we had, and we are looking at a significant challenge ahead. The International Labor Organization also projects that about 305 million full-time jobs will be lost in this crisis, and about 1.6 billion informal workers are at risk of losing jobs. Basically, the sectors that they are looking at that will be affected by this crisis basically are accommodation, arts, entertainment, construction, manufacturing, real estate, transport, and wholesale and retail trade. These are already as also what we have been observing here. The World Trade Organization, on the other hand, looks at the global trade significant decline also. Looking at three scenarios, they are showing us that trade actually, even in the optimistic setting, we will see significant drop in this by this year. And in terms of tourism, we are actually, even the best scenario, we are looking at a decline of about 58% of tourist arrivals, and that is equivalent to tourism receipts going back to 2004 level. So, that's how big the impact is in the tourism sector. Now, having said and looked at the global picture of the economic picture, what is the world right now in terms of the global response to the COVID? And you can actually look at these charts from the worldometers, and you can find how we are faring as of the moment. Well, in terms of daily cases, we are still seeing a significant increase all over the world, but the daily deaths have been going down. And this is more or less on a general scale, the world is flattening the curve, meaning it's allowing more opportunities or capacities for health centers or hospitals to absorb those sick people. Now, in terms of the Philippines, this is report coming from the WHO. Uh, we are actually, we are all worried and concerned about the data that we receive every day. So it's good to see it from a bird's eye view from the top and see where really are the areas that are being affected by this COVID. And as you can see, the dark red areas are only four. No? That's Zamboanga, Davao, Cebu, and of course we are in Metro Manila. And then sporadically spread all over the country. So there's also that challenge. We cannot afford other places having um, outbreaks as well. In terms of the question, are we getting better in addressing COVID? This also data from the WHO telling us that actually, in a way, the ICU utilization rate overall national is about at 33.4%. So if we are going to be strict about the capacities, it's telling us that we are improving in terms of capacity, but we have yet to see the lowering of the positivity rate. So that's still a challenge as of the moment. So even as we are improving in a general sense in the way things are going as we fight the virus in the country, the realities remain. We will need a vaccine or develop herd immunity before we will be able to really go back to the life before all of this. Because without the vaccine and herd immunity, that even if we remove all the lockdowns, even if we go back, no lockdowns anymore, I think people consciously will be very much afraid to go out, and also uh, unless we know that we will not be infected. So that's really the biggest challenge that we are facing. And the challenge is the impact of that, the lack of confidence of people will lead to what we are seeing right now, a severe economic downturn. And that's where we are facing a new normal in that regard. Um, I want to talk about now in the economic aspect. No? So if we are able to manage the health challenge and manage it well, we still have to manage the bigger impact of the economic aspects of this COVID. Looking back in the past 20 plus years, the Philippines also had experienced a lot of crisis. Um, I'm showing you data here wherein these blue bars represent the growth of the Philippines, economic growth. And as you can see, the economic growth of the Philippines actually uh, was affected only by two big events, the Asian financial crisis in 1998 and then the global financial crisis in 2009. So both crises uh, hit us, and it hit other countries differently. Okay, so for example, China was impacted, but not as much. They still grew, but other countries, almost every country affected by this crisis, reflected a V-shaped recovery. That means they immediately recovered the year after that. So it's not that it was very bad for almost every country in the world. But what is important for us to understand here that's that this crisis we are facing right now is not a financial crisis. This is a real economic crisis wherein the problem is there is no supply and there is no demand, meaning you are choking both. So it will, and if not managed well, could lead to financial crisis, which is a question of not enough money circulating in the system or too much money circulating in the system. So that's not our challenge right now. Our challenge is the real economy is being choked by the lockdowns. So already we had the first quarter for performance of the economy coming out in May. So we already know, at least, no, in a very general sense, the impact of the crisis started really as early as January when when we started to close international flights from China, and so it already affected our tourism sector, and slowly but surely the implication already reflected in our trade, in the way we do exports and imports. And then by March 15, we totally closed down about 70% of the economy. So this is the result that a lot of activities were stopped. No, so the main impact of the crisis is really in accommodation and food and services. Mining and quarrying is already been has been slowing down, so it's just an additional effect on them. So transportation also pulled down, manufacturing, construction. Uh, but the biggest winners in this crisis are finance, because whatever happens, we need financial activities, and all of us have been able to learn online facilities in finance as well, and then health and human resources, of course, ICT, and then utility. So these are the already the sectors. They're already telling us these are the sectors that will survive through this crisis. Um, Also, if you remember, towards the Holy Week in April, there was a survey that came out, questions being asked of us by the government. Basically, this is telling us government wants to know what are we going to do, or what are we doing, or how are we in this crisis. So there was a survey, and mostly focused on firms, consumers, and farmers. And I'm showing you the impact on firms. So this is telling us that a lot of firms actually are telling all of us that the yellow bars here saying that they have no operations. So this is already the result of that coming from the NEDA. A lot have no operations. Um, they forecast that they will have zero sales. So this includes a lot of the wholesale and retail. Later, that's very important because a significant portion of our workforce are in retail and wholesale trade, right? Then about 71% of enterprises that are affected by the crisis are micro. And we know many businesses in this country are really micro, employing only 1 to 9 employees. And so if they are affected, then the employees are also affected. So the 71% is huge. No? So yun po yung mga for sure are having a difficult time right now. The same survey released that showed this result. About 44% of the respondents said they were laid off from work. So this is a huge number. And then when the data, official labor force data, came in about a week and a half ago, this was what we found out. Okay, that labor force actually contracted by 3 million, meaning those people who want to work or who want to participate to work, who cannot participate to work, decreased by 3 million, right? And the unemployed increased all-time high, 17.7%. I'm showing you data here that goes back to 1956. We never had unemployment rate that high. So this is how deep it impacted our labor force. No? If you look at this data, it's already going down. Sana bumababa na yung unemployment and underemployment in the country, but this crisis struck. So it, in fact, reversed significantly. And in relation to total job losses, we computed the labor force survey results. We estimated about close to 8 million jobs were lost. 8 million jobs. So this is not unemployed, but jobs that were lost because of the crisis. So more or less, they mirror. Meron ng unemployed, and then the sectors affected. These are the jobs that were lost. Where were the jobs that were lost? In manufacturing, about 846,000. In construction, about 1.5 million jobs. In wholesale and retail, where you have your malls, your restaurants, yung lahat ng mga nagtitinda, no? na may pwesto affected, there are about 2 million jobs there. Transport, we have seen that, about 956,000. Accommodation, food services, also affected. So very, very significant number of people losing their jobs. If you look at the occupation occupation side, we look at the left side, you look at the sector. If you look at the occupation, um, hit also were elementary occupations, crafts, and then even managers have lost their jobs, mainly possibly because they have the higher pay. This came out, I think, this morning officially, but yesterday, last night, the SWS reported this. About 83% of people said that their quality of life really went very bad. Okay, so this is the highest from the first time they tracked it in the mid 80s. Okay, and there are some gainers. Siguro ito yung mga nasa mga logistics na well placed. Okay, so that's the picture basically domestically. So that's what we are facing. I'd like to now talk about what is the impact going to be in relation to our kababayans who are OFWs working abroad. So one of the challenges that we are going to see, and we are actually seeing now, but I think will continue, is because of oil prices. While we want low oil prices, that's good for us as consumers, but actually that's not very good for many of our OFWs. If you look at this data, the drop in oil prices was so severe, so big, that it created a lot of oversupply in the not only in the Philippines but all over the world. And when oil prices drops like that, it will result to a significant decline in the income of countries that are employing more than 60% or almost 60% of our OFWs. So Kuwait, Qatar, Iraq, Oman, Saudi, UAE, they will have negative income effect. So they will have negative income, so decline of their incomes because of the oil price collapse. This is our from our colleagues from the World Bank. So that's very challenging. And how is that in relation to the Philippines? The upper part of this table shows us that the global presence of Filipinos about 55%, in the Middle East, 18.7, in East Asia, and those are the two big numbers, and 9% Southeast and South Central Asia. These are the really big numbers that you are looking at. We have not heard of workers in Europe and North America coming back home, except those who are in the cruise lines. But those who are coming back home are mostly those who are affected in the service sector, because once the oil is not moving, then the related sectors, uh, services in particular, are affected. And so we project actually about 400,000 Filipinos to be sent back home this year. As of today, I think the Department of Labor already announced that they have repatriated close to 100,000. So, and there are still a lot more waiting to be repatriated. So if that estimate is correct, we're probably looking at 400,000. And that would pull down our remittances by about 20%, which is really huge, because we all know that we are an economy, a country that has been fueled by remittances for the last 20 years. And so this will be a big change in the way of doing things in this country. Primarily, the remittances of the OFWs help to fuel a lot of activities, from housing to education to health to malls and a lot of consumption. And I already showed you the tourism impact globally, and this is what is going to happen in our country as well. The accommodations, food and beverage, transport, entertainment, and including shopping will be affected by the decline in tourism. So the international tourism at least contributes about $8 to $9 billion a year to the country, which is about one third of remittances. So that's also a big amount. For the month of April alone, this is from that same survey of NEDA, we've lost about $1.2 billion. So if that's a monthly, if we annualize that, that means we probably will lose almost all our tourism receipts, except that for January and February. So very, very big losses in tourism. In terms of regional impact, when we close the economy for the lockdown, we are actually really choking the whole country, because the NCR contributes about 35% to our economy. Region 4A, Calabar Zone, contributes about 18%. Region 3, about 10%. So you add those three alone, no? Not counting the rest in Luzon, that's already close to about 70% of total GDP. So if you close that, no activity, then you will be sure that economic activity, there will be no economic growth, but the severe contraction is going to be what we are going to experience. Um, the NEDA estimates that in that 1 month of lockdown, we lost 1.1 trillion pesos. 1.1 trillion of pesos is 1/18 of the total GDP of this country, or about 5% was lost. So if the lockdown persists in the next, well, as we are seeing, it's not total lockdown, but I think we are just seeing only about 40 to 50% of workers going back to work. So we can already see that a significant contraction is happening. So what is the government doing to help the economy? So these are the announcements that government made. So they said moratorium on loans, mortgages, rent until the end of the lockdown, extension of deadlines of payments of government requirements, renewals. They cut the lending rates so that those who are paying mortgages or paying business loans will have to pay do not need to pay higher interest rates. They also cut the reserve requirements, so they want to tell the banks to lend more to people so that those who need money can go easily to the banks. The central bank also provided additional credit to stand by 300 billion. And from whatever savings they had last year, about 260 billion were given for social amelioration. Of course, this is all part of the Bayanihan 1, which will expire, if I'm not mistaken, in the next 2 or 3 days. Okay, so after that, a lot of these may need to be renegotiated. Um, So when you release a lot of money into the system, lower the interest rate, cut the reserve requirements, so the banks are very liquid, so there is money. So this is a strategy because we have learned what happened in the Great Depression when the banks did not do anything. So there's no money in the system. The US went to a tailspin in the 1920s. But here we are liquid. Unfortunately, as I said, this is not a monetary crisis. So it's not that the firms don't have money or don't have economic uh, the business is bad. It's not the business is bad. The business is choked, so the business cannot operate. So even in that case, they don't need to borrow money, because if they borrow money, what will they do that for if there's no economic activity? So my view is that many of this money had gone to the stock market. So if you have investment in stock market, you will be surprised. The stock market actually went up already by about 20% or almost 20% from its lowest point in March. So what are the plans of the government moving forward? So we are finished with Bayanihan 1. So what do we do since this crisis has not ended? This is the report of the Department of Finance. They said that they have actually prepared about 1.75 trillion, about one-fourth of the total national budget, uh, to support the country. So Pillar 1 is already part of Bayanihan 1. Pillar 2 is also part. Now they are looking at Pillar 3 and 4, which is really to help the different sectors cope with the crisis. Okay. These are their priorities. So number one, they said they will restart the build. They will do mass tracing, and then they will support the value chain for food and logistics. As you have seen, probably a lot of food were wasted because they cannot go to the markets. They are focusing on the Balik Provincia program. They will prioritize the 2021 budget as well. They don't want to give any more subsidies, but they want to give loans. They will lend they will give money for the government banks to lend. Okay, so this is their strategy, and they want to pass the create law, which is the second major tax reform program that has not been able to pass. So they are saying that this can help lower income tax liability. So in a way, will help firms cope with this crisis. So these are the priority measures from the executive. Now, Congress, on the other hand, has a different view. They have discussed the bill called ARISE, the Accelerated Recovery and Investment Stimulus for the Economy, formerly PESA, and they want to spend 1.3 trillion. So beyond the actual cash, this is not accrued stimulus, but actual subsidies. So they want to give wage subsidies, assistance to victims, regulatory relief. They want to provide loans to the sectors that are affected, sectoral intervention, and they also want structural intervention. So they want to change the economic structure. It's an opportunity to redo a lot of things that we cannot redo before, right? So that will the Congress think that will cost 1.3 trillion. So we'll wait because Congress is on recess, so this will be discussed most likely in the when Congress opens in July. So this will be part probably of the president's SONA. Mm. Last week also I had an opportunity to participate in the webinar where the business sector expressed their sentiments over what is happening right now in the country. So particularly in regard to their activities. And firstly, they observed that while the business sector, particularly the services, can move despite despite these restrictions, they cite an example: the BPOs, they can actually operate because they are online, they can work from home. That's not really the case because they really have to work in a common environment, if especially if it's for processing certain activities. So they surmise that only 50% of the BPOs are really functioning right now. They also say that the food supply is really still disrupted. We still see a lot of food not going into the markets. The MSMEs, even if you open up the malls now, because very few people can go to the malls, with no public transport, then they are unable to really start. You know, they will just increase their payment without income coming in. Uh, and they already said about 2,000 companies are closing permanently because really there's no people going into their business. And they said that many of the business actually for the MECQ to GCQ in the most centers in Metro Manila, they are actually, what they're doing is not really earning money right now. They're retrofitting their businesses so that they can accommodate people. So that's also adding to a lot of their cost. Um, Also, they have a big challenge since the new normal requires a different kind of skill set. So particularly the service sector, they cannot be easily re-employed in other sectors because the skill sets that they have requires contact with people. So that's a big challenge for them. How to make these people who are going to be permanently laid off to adjust. No, even if they don't want to, they have really a difficult time. And so, in reality, the business sector is saying that they can only have 30% capacity, operational capacity, even in this GCQ environment. So let's look at the bright side. Excuse me. Let's look at the bright side. Having said all of that, it's quite worrisome. But look at the bright side. What is the bright side? Actually, in the Philippines, there's an opportunity that we can restart domestic tourism. Actually, this data from the Philippine Statistics Authority tells us that in our country, the domestic tourism is still the bigger contributor to tourism activities. So yes, the dollars may be important, but domestic tourism is also important. So we know that because of the airlines that are flying all around this country. So hopefully, when we are able to manage small outbreaks all over, we can start, to do domestic tourism and help the hospitality sector recover. Another sector that we have been pushing all these years in the economics department and in ASERD is that we have neglected agriculture for a long time. And this is really an opportunity because if you look at this picture, this chart, you can see that actually every places in the country except Metro Manila had a strong capacity still to produce agriculture. There's still agricultural production. It's just that the output is so insignificant in relation to total economy. But there is agricultural activity all over. In also, we this chart I have to explain a little bit technical. What has happened in the last few crises is that the banking sector were the ones affected by the crisis. But this because uh, many companies are not able to pay their loans. But you can see in this chart, NPLs is non-performing loans. You can see the blue line going down significantly, right? It has started to go up last few months, but still way below the in 2005 when it was about 13% of the loans of banks are non-performing, meaning they could not claim it, they could not they could not be repaid. And the red bars here represent the amount of money the banks are preparing to arm themselves just in case the banks will not, the borrowers cannot pay. We have provided for it, so they have provision. So we can see this going up. So this is one way of looking confidently that the banks will not tank out in this crisis. Besides, you have seen that the most economic activity are in the financial sector. Also, we have heard the government keeps on announcing they're borrowing money from World Bank, ADB. Uh, they have raised their own bonds abroad because the Philippines had really not borrowed in the last 10 years. And even if we borrow right now, because our debt to GDP ratio, meaning, well, if you look at your personal budget, if your income is let's say 100 and you are borrowing about 20% of that, I think you can say that you can repay because it's only one fifth of what you earn. So in the same manner, the Philippines is in that context right now, about one fifth of GDP. So it means it has the capacity to absorb some more loans. Okay, but of course, there's a limit to the long-term absorptive capacity naman. But in that sense, okay po tayo, we can borrow. Uh, some points, the central banks can keep on cutting the rates, but as I said, this is not a liquidity problem. We don't need to flood the economy with more money if no one will borrow, right? The real solution is a vaccine. We need probably more fiscal stimulus than what the government is trying to give us. For example, Hong Kong is giving $10,000 for each permanent residence. Singapore, $100 to $300. We have given about 8,000 to 5,000, but still unable to provide for it correctly. We need to really spend more than what we are doing right now. So it's not easier said than done, but that's what needs to be done. Even if we have less cases, that doesn't mean that the impact is not the same. So, I mean, you have seen information saying countries are doing better. My view is that yes, they may have managed it, but there's still a lot of work because they need to produce not only for internal consumption but also external consumption. So there's still a global value chain out there. So a lot of work for everybody. Uh, in May, I think mid-May, economics department came up with a policy statement In fact, our estimate at the ASERD is that we need to at least spend about 2 trillion pesos in the next 3 years as a stimulus to push the economy, because there's no one who's going to spend that much but the government. And we in our policy brief we call for a revision of the Philippine Development Plan, right? And basically we're calling to for massive resources to be put on testing, containment, and health system. This is the only way to create confidence in our workers and business, right? And we still need to put subsidy for the survival of businesses. Giving them loans. I mean, this is to me. This is basic business mindset. Why will I borrow if no one is going to buy my product? So I need first to ensure that my business will survive. So that's why the mindset, I think, from this perspective, is to subsidize in the meantime to prepare, including retrofitting, which is expensive. If you don't have sales, how can you even think about borrowing? This is also, as I said earlier, an opportunity to change the economic structure. We have been so centralized. About 35% of GDP is in Metro Manila. If we can spread that a little bit and reprioritize agriculture for our own food security and preparations for our own need. You know, agriculture is not only about food; it's also about nutrition. So if we are feeding our people right, then we have better nutrition. Right now, that's another challenge. We might have the demographic dividend coming, but a lot of our people are really, the young ones are really challenged. No? We have one of the highest stunted population in the world. Digital infrastructure is very important. We have to spend some money to improve this, and we hope that the existing providers and the third one that's coming should do its best to facilitate this. There are other things we can continue the build, but also if the private sector have extra money, then allow them to restart, helping the government through public-private partnerships so the government can focus more on health and social protection. So our thinking is that we are not going to have a V shape. That's not possible because of the challenges we're facing. More a V shape is like this, no? That's the V. Most likely we're looking at the U, hopefully not an L, right? Because a V would lead us to an immediate recovery. So what we have lost in 2020 will be recovered immediately. But we think we are looking more of a yellow, no, U shape recovery. Hopefully not, as I said, a U, A and L. This is our initial forecast. We don't, well, if government spends enough, we probably will still see about a minus 4.3 GDP through the year, no? A contraction of about 4%. The second quarter, where we are right now, would be the worst, close to about 10% contraction. And assuming businesses are able to move freely, so you are able to minimize the challenges out of tracing, testing, and the likes, then you have an opportunity to bring back some economic activity, but not 100%. That's very unlikely. So over the years, maybe 2.1 next year, 2021, we grow a little bit. Not abrupt again, because it's not that the economy stops and then tomorrow opens again. No, the conditions are changed, so the conditions will require adjustments and retrofitting. So it's to us, our view, it's a gradual recovery, even if it's a deep decline in this year. So that's those are the points that I want to say. Sorry about the spelling. The realities in the new normal is that, as I said, government cannot allow business to open 100% without capacities to isolate can only provide limited support. 70% will be up and running. Just some advice for everyone. How should we adjust in this environment that we are facing right now? I think the data I've shown you should make us think and be realistic about it. It's not that we are not coming back to where we are last March. So what do we do? Uh, I think the best thing to do right now is if we are facing a huge challenge, we need to make an assessment of all our resources. Assess, to write down, make an inventory of what we need, what we want. How long can we ride this uncertainty if incomes change, if income gets lower, or if we lose income, lose jobs? Um, how should we adjust? Well, this year, maybe don't think about any income, prepare. The goal this year is to prepare well. A lot of things have been lost, but they're not useless, so we can repurpose a lot of the things we are using. And then we have already adjusted 3 months into this situation. We have adjusted to living for the essentials. Actually, if we are still receiving our salary this time, for the last 3 months, actually people have already made savings, no? Because hindi lumalabas, walang expenditures outside, purely food, utilities lang. So you should have saved by now, no? If you have not been saving. Uh, how can we maximize work from home? Yan, medyo maging marikondo ka, ayusin mong bahay mo. Find out what are the things you need, things you don't need any more pamigay or barter. We have seen a lot of that happening. We have involved the families here and let them understand the situation. Have a weekly target accomplishment for the plans. The things that make us worry and anxious is that we don't know what's happening. Parang we're just moving to the flow. So have a weekly accomplishment for what we are doing. And to me, I think the best thing that have happened in this lockdown is it's a good time to renew relationships with my family members. Our busy schedules before now puts us together. It's maraming time. So, and more importantly, can have more time with God as a family as well. And important, I think, to be very thankful that we are still okay and that we have received a lot of blessings. Just a warning, fair warning, the stock market, as I said, is going up, but I'm going to show you this chart that shows the Dow Jones Industrial Average in 1928 to 1930 when the market dropped and then there was a rally, the market was going up. Be careful if you're investing at this time because many things look cheap today. If you have extra money, put it in things that are liquid, meaning you can get it immediately, and then their fixed income you can project how much you can get and focus on loan companies with less debts and maintain good cash flows. A lot of calls to buy real estate because bargain, dami nagbebenta. My view, maybe they will get softer in the next few months, so don't rush into buying them. Do not put everything in a single vehicle. Look at companies and services that providing essentials. So if you're going to a business right now, think about essentials. Okay? Don't think about things na malabong kumita. And if somebody tells you to do this, to do that, do not just believe, study and research, no? Including what I'm saying right now. Maybe you don't believe me, it's okay, study. It's more important things. And finally, I'd like to end with some words from the Word of God. There's a lot of mindset saying that this too shall pass, matatapos din to. That mindset is not, I think, what these verses in the Bible is telling us in Ecclesiastes 11:4 to 6 says, farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest. Just as you cannot understand the path of the wind or the mystery of a tiny baby growing in its mother's womb, so you cannot understand the activity of God who does all things. Plant your seed in the morning, keep busy all afternoon, for you don't know if profit will come from one activity or another, or maybe both. Very nice verses tells us of what our attitude should be. Do not wait for things to get better. Keep busy. Start thinking about survival. We need to thrive. Try everything in our power to distribute the resource and leave everything to God and let God do His part. So I think I'll end there. I'd like to thank all of you for listening to this sharing and hope you have an opportunity later to listen to your question and answer some of them. Thank you very much. God bless.
Thank you very much, Sir Alvin. No? Personally, when you started the presentation, it all kind of felt quite depressing in a sense, no? But with how you ended it, no, it was actually quite uplifting. No? So thank you for that. And secondly, the presentation, the study you had given, you had shared with us, just like the other studies we have heard here on Acts of Magis, have in a sense made real the things we are feeling or thinking already. And then now we see data, now we see figures, and then they're more concrete now for the layperson. No? And again, thank you for doing this. And sir, siguro just as a start of question, we gathered some from earlier already. In your presentation, you sort of showed that we will have about 2 years to recover. Is that correct? Or what is the time frame for recovery, really? How long will this crisis last?
Well, the our view is that probably the recovery will 2 years gradual. It's not a it's not a swift recovery but gradual. So there will be economic activities, but not as fast as what we want it to be. So 2 years or it can be more.
Then, sir, as taking a question from Dr. Banjo Bautista, all right, where would you say education is going in the next 5 years?
Ako ba sasagot nun? Well, I think education needs, well, as we are all doing here in Ateneo, we are retrofitting education. Of course, education will remain an important government activity, so they will spend money for it definitely. But for the ordinary household, that's a challenge if they are used to, for example, receiving income from abroad in one for one to finance education. That will be a challenge. So therefore, the shift to online kind of education is really what is going to be the norm. Some adjustments though need to be made. It's not as we are experiencing. It's not easy. The system is not able to adjust and adapt to it. So malaking adjustments, no? I think I've heard or seen an article saying parang 1 year muna wala munang parang academic freeze, parang ganyan. So what I guess what it wanted to say is that kailangan din tayong, I mean, in education we also need to assess what are our assets and our resources and how can we adapt to this new environment. Because just going through it abruptly may will have dropouts along the way. Those who cannot adjust and those who do not have the resources and the capacity. So sa basic education yon malaking challenge. I think at least sa atin sa mga universities, easier to adapt, but basic education will really have a challenging time in these new adjustments. Of course, there had always been work from ang tinatawag nito yung homeschool. In fact, may pamangkin ako ng homeschool, okay naman, no? So sa mga basic, but still it requires some sort of nakikita pa din, and there's a lot of activities that requires face-to-face activities too. So it probably will take a lot of effort, time, resources from both personal level and then the government to make education. So siguro this school year na papasok will be adjustment lang mangyayari sa basic education. At least sa university siguro hindi ganun kalaki. So in this semester, the first semester would be probably the adjustment. Siguro first 2 months and then eventually faster. But basic education will be a big challenge.
Okay, sir. And in relation to that, of how about our graduates? So this is a question from Dr. Habana. No? What are their prospects, no? Especially the new graduates, batch 2020, the COVID batch? What's in store for them?
Oh yeah, that's a big problem for the new graduates if they are in the industries that are, for example, industries that are affected right now, so mostly services. So since graduate naman ng mga yan, so meron silang skill to reskill themselves. No, this is really a time to reskill. Uh, in other places, you need to downskill. In other places, you need to upskill. So we have to learn a lot of things, very quickly. So the internet is still a gift that we can use, maximize it to the. I mean, it will all be internet at the moment. So siguro kailangan talaga magdagdag ng konting kaalaman, Um, at saka kailangan merong konting business mindset sa mga
Mhm.
sitwasyon na to because work as it is going to be very challenging. I mean, I have seen companies saying, we have the resources but we cannot employ all of you. So baka mangyari, 1/3 lang ang sweldo, one half, di ba? Okay ba yan sa mga bagong nag-work? Di ba? So that's the reality. Yun naman yung katotohanan when you are finding work right now or you're working right now. As I said, if you still receive the full amount of your salary prior to the crisis, actually you should be saving. You should be saving because you're not spending much. So in reality, people can survive with one half siguro ng income nila for the meantime, to thrive in this situation. So mga graduates, siguro yun din, madami adjustment. How much pay are they expecting? So yun yung mga questions na yun pumapasok.
Maybe as the last question related to education, sir, Dr. Ma'am Banjo expounded lang that for how might the household economic crisis, so to speak, affect, I guess, the capacities or even the choices of parents to send their children to schools. What's the interplay of those two aspects?
Yeah, I understand that concern, because while education is a priority in many Filipino households, the challenge is, if you're tied up to the limited income, then some of it had to go, including education. Siguro hindi naman yung hindi na nila itutuloy, but probably there'll be a chance for them to ask for longer payment terms. Hindi na yung the usual. So this might be to tie them up over this period. So ito nga sinasabi ko, this year would be a very challenging year for everybody. So yun po siguro yung magiging situation diyan sa education. Sa common household budget, mataas ang priority sa education, but if maapektuhan yung essentials right now, I think the best way is to help schools meet, so students meet and parents to be able to meet the educational requirements is kailangan siyang i-chop siguro para may capacity sila to send the children to schools.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'll try to dovetail some of the questions, given our time. I'll start it off with Mr. Julius de la Cruz's question that will the Philippines suffer unemployment, the unemployment or underemployment crisis for the next few years? And related to that, given the numerous plans of the government to help and heal the economy, which ones seem to be successful and which ones, might need a little more improvement?
Well, siguro right now, we are improving in the area of managing yung tracing, yung testing. But we need to spend more money there to make it work very well. Kasi our challenge is that the family, well, people in general, have no confidence eh. Kailangan bumalik yung confidence natin na lumabas, mag-work. Kasi the mere fact that they're not allowing the public transport to go around is because kung di siya tatakbo, ibig sabihin hindi pa maayos yung testing. So if we can make that work, if we can test people as much as possible, as many as possible, yun doon tayo siguro huhugot ng kaalaman at katatagan. We will have an opportunity to have perspective to move on sa situation na to. Otherwise, yun nga, even if you open up the businesses and people are not going out, hindi rin eh. Hindi din makakapasok eh, di ba? So yun ang kailangan natin tulungan.
Yes. Our last two questions. So, from Mr. Gideon Butalit, right? He said that basically those who died from COVID, or at least the average age is close to the average life expectancy and have comorbidities. Okay. Then he was saying that might it have been a wrong decision, but he uses the term huge mistake, right, to have these lockdowns from an economic sense.
Yeah, that's the strategy of Sweden, some Vietnam and Korea, where they have the capacity to meet head on the influx of sick people. Sweden, for example, ang taas ng death rate, no? Ang dami namamatay, but they are able to manage it. So, in our case, I think it's more of the government knowing baka hindi natin kayanin. Kahit na mas mga babata yung mga tao dito. No? I mean, to me, a life is a life. So, kung yun ang magiging impact, kung tutusin, no, if you look at the numbers, hindi naman malalaki yan eh, compared to Brazil, US, maliit lang naman yung pinag-uusapan natin dito na apektuhan, but a life is a life. So, mas mabuti tayo mag-save ng buhay.
Yes. And as a closing question, and this was gathered earlier also. What's your opinion about the role of the digital economy during this time of crisis? I guess all the online type of transactions, and the digital economy as a whole. How is it as a player given our current context?
Well, I think we are forced to it, no? We are forced to the digital economy. A lot of people are still they're dabbling in it, but they're not. Maybe they're hesitant at first, but now everybody has to learn and use digital economy and be part of it one way or another. Otherwise, you will be excluded in the economic activity. The economic activity is basically digital right now. No? Very, very minimal yung harapan na trabaho at negosyo ngayon. So you really need to be part of a digital process, and that's why in our situation, very very important yung ating mga providers ng digital services, infrastructure muna, and then the accessibility, affordability, stability. These are things you need. And then also dapat matuto din yung mga taong hindi sila pasok sa kahit na anong mga features ng digital economy, because we are exposing ourselves to a lot of risk as well. So may learning curve pa rin tayo ngayon, but hopefully things people get better, no, in this situation.
Okay. So, well, unfortunately, that's the time we have for today. We'd like to thank, of course, Dr. Alvin Ang. If people could applaud, I'm sure we could hear them. For now, we'll give you acts of Magis hearts. All right. These are for you.
Salamat
Yes,
po.
sir. And then, sir, maybe your last So a few last words from you, and then how could people get in touch with you if they have questions or if they'd like to help out in your research?
Okay. Well, okay lang magpo-promote ako. Actually, because there's a lot of uncertainties. You know, this is the first time we are going to enter into a recession. Many people don't know what a recession looks like. And so that's why I've been warning people, this is not going to be business as usual. We have to be realistic about what is happening around us and what will happen in the next few days. So I came up with a YouTube channel called Your Everyday Economist, where I try to explain what a recession is, what are different implications. So, yun po, pwede nyo tingnan. These are part of the things that I shared with you, part of research, but I made it very, very simple. Para lahat, everybody can understand it. Na magagamit sa araw-araw, maintindihan kung ano yung nangyayari at mangyayari sa atin so we can prepare accordingly. So, I hope I encourage also our colleagues in Ateneo, if you can make yung mga ganitong klaseng simple understanding, kasi first time itong dadaanan ng maraming tao. Hindi, ang natatandaan kong recession 20 years ago, hindi ganito kalala. Mukhang calm tayo ngayon, but things might not be as well as we are seeing right now. So we have to be prepared for it.
Thank you very much, Dr. It's thank you for grounding us, I guess, in these realities, right? But also giving all the very practical tips you had enumerated earlier. And so we'd also like to thank our audience for joining us this afternoon. If you're interested to see the past episodes of Acts of Magis, they are on the Ateneo Facebook page. All right, and you can also access them through Archium, the studies rather of our previous guests, as well as Sir Alvin's at the archium.ateneo.edu. All right. So thank you for joining us today. We'll see you again next week for yet another, the eighth episode of Acts of Magis, Ateneans, Serving Society. I'm Chris Castillo, your host. Take care and God bless you.